Hello everyone, welcome to part 15 of this series. We're continuing with the second magic spell. The nature of this spell is quite different and we're getting really creative with the effect the spell has on the environment. Before we start, I would like to thank all of my Patreon supporters for the amazing support. This scene will be made available on Patreon. So we're going to continue where we left off last time. A lot of the actions we'll be using are actually going to be quite similar. So we're going to start off by creating some prefabs that will instantiate in this case. The goal here is not just to create a cool effect, but also for it to be, effective and quite good performance-wise. So let's get started. So first off, I'm going to do a tutorial. So, remove tutorial yourself and tutorial spawn flames, or just spawn flames. There we go. And inside of here we're going to add a spawner with a sphere collider. So there we go. And I'm going to set all of this to 0 and the spawner is going to be set to 0 as well. Quite important because this will become a prefab, so we need to make sure those values are all 0. And this spawner from the combat module is going to spawn a couple of flames for us. So let's keep it default, that's fine. Going to keep the radius to 4 and the collider is going to be set to 14. Now this value of 14 is one you'll see a lot, and the reason I'm using that is because that's what I define as a good radius. So if you want this to be bigger, smaller, I would suggest experimenting with that yourself. Once you're done, following all of this, it's just easier to follow along, and afterwards you can play around with all of those values and see what works for you. So we're going to add one spawnable, and it will be 12 times, and we're going to add one of the small flames from the particle effect pack from Cinti. I'll put all of the links in the descriptions for everything I'm using here. What is it? Fire small. There we go. And we're spawning it 12 times. So this is going to be pretty cool. This is basically going to be the aftermath, and we're going to have flames all around. I think it's a pretty nice little effect. So yeah, we'll have flames all around. And that's that's pretty much it for this one. There's not going to be anything else. We do need to disable a couple of things here and we're good. So yeah, we're all set. I'm just thinking for a moment. Now you can keep the pattern the same every time. I'm just not going to do that, so it will be a bit more random, which is something I personally do like. So that's it for our spawner. So let's drag that in and let's remove it from our scene. Then next up we are going to create our scorch effect. Now the scorch effect is going to do more than just scorch. The thing with the scorch effect is basically that it's also going to include our colliders, and that's quite an important little detail. So let's start by setting that up. So I'm going to do tutorial in front of it again, and I'm going to do TVE scorch, set all of these values to 0, again quite important, and I'm going to add 2 elements here. So element 1 and element 2. There we go. Only one of them is going to be an actual color element. That's quite important as well. So let's set that up, and the color will be black, so it's going to make the terrain black. Well, not the terrain, just the vegetation. Let's set all of this to 0 as well. There we go. And the same for this one, everything to 0, because we are going to instantiate it, so it's quite important those values are correct. And then next up, we're going to change this to size. And I'm going to do 0.6 here. I think that's enough. Basically, this is going to resize the the vegetation, and if this value becomes too low, there's hardly anything left. So I do prefer not making it too small, but change this to whatever you want, obviously. It's important that these actually use the correct layers as well, and it will automatically recognize that once you set it up, but just make sure these are the correct layers. And the last thing we're going to add, but before I do that, I'm going to already change this to 0.1 on both of them. So that's going to be our scale. And I'm going to add a sphere. There we go. And this sphere is going to be our actual collider. So let's do a different one. I'm going to use a capsule. There we go. That's better. And the reason I'm using a capsule, so let's turn on those gizmos, is because we resized everything to 0.1 here, and the capsule matches a bit better. So yeah, it just looks better. So yeah, I'm going to use a capsule. Cool. So that's way underground. And the reason it's underground, by the way, is because the terrain is not set at 0 on the y-axis. Obviously, as it has some height. And let's remove those meshes. And I'm going to use spell again as the tag for our collider, because that's what's going to cause the damage. So I do think that's it's nice. We'll set up things like damage values, etc. all later. So by default now it will just do the default damage, and obviously that's not going to be enough for a big explosion of fire, but it serves its purpose for now. And let's set these to -4. Important little detail, they should be below ground always. So -4, not for the sphere though, or capsule, whatever it is now. And yeah, we're good. So that's it for this one. So I'm going to drag that in as well. There we go. And let's remove this. And I did actually completely forget to set up its actions, which is not that smart. And I'm pretty sure I did the same for our flames. So one little detail I actually forgot to do on the flames, and let's actually do that straight away and start off with the flames, as that is just going to be a tiny bit easier, is setting up the actions. So we're going to add a trigger here, which is going to be a on enable. There we go. And actions. Perfect. And this is for our flames, so just going to do that first. And the value here, which I really want to express, so the weight of 1.9, which is something you'll see me do a bit more as well, is tied to the animation. So at 1.9 seconds, it just matches the animation I'm using. So if you are going to use a different animation, I'll obviously link the one I'm using in the description. But if you are going to use a different animation, play around with these values of the weights and the delays I'm going to add to match what point of the animation seems right for you. So hence the 1.9. So important little detail. So I'm going to use a set active, going to drag in that spawner, and I'm going to turn off this one straight away before I forget. And then I'm going to add another weight, and this will be about 10 seconds, and it will take 10 seconds for the flames to, go away. They shouldn't last forever. And we're going to turn that off again. And yeah, perfect. So that's it for our prefab for the flames, and let's do the same with our scorch here. So I need to set up some values here as well, obviously. So we're going to do exactly the same. So we're going to add a trigger, and this will also be a on enable. Some actions, and we're going to drag that in. So the first one is going to be from action pack 1, and that's going to be our scale object by value. So let's drag in that entire group, and we're going to scale it on the X and Z axis, and those are the ones I made smaller initially. So the same 14 I used before, the same 1.9 as the animation delay, just to match it up. And we're going to add a wait. Again, I'm going to do 10 seconds just to match the flames and everything else. If you want this to stay a lot longer in the scene, make it 20 minutes if you want. And then let's drag this in. Just keep in mind, the longer it stays, the longer you give the player the ability to use the effect again, and it's going to build up, you know, clones. So it will have a minor, because we're not really doing anything all that special, let's be real here, but it will have a minor impact on performance. And let's add a couple of minuses here, so we're growing it back. And this is going to be quite a bit longer, so I'm going to use 14. And it will take 14 seconds for it to grow back. Maybe a bit long, but yeah, I do enjoy that. And destroy after finishing has to be on as well, because otherwise it won't disappear from our hierarchy. And there we go. So I'm going to hit save. And did I do destroy finishing with our flames? No, I didn't. Let's do that as well. And there we go. So next up we have our last thing we need to instantiate, and that's going to be a nuke effect, which sounds a bit exaggerated, but we're going to add this quite a bit. And the nuke effect basically is, well, let me drag it on the player and you'll be able to see for yourself. There we go. Let's set this to 0 and hit restart. And the nuke effect is going to be our fire basically. And this looks really, really, really cool. I personally think so, but it's a bit much for a fire effect. So I'm going to unpack this prefab. I'm going to create a new empty here. So let's already drag this out. It doesn't need to be part of the player. So I'm going to create a new empty, and I'm going to call this fire explosion. And then let's do tutorial in front of it again. The reason I'm adding tutorials just to make sure I'm not accidentally using the ones I created before, because you know, then we can't really know if it works well or not. So we're going to do 0 on all of these as well, and this is going to be 0 as well. Well, let's still do, what was it, 13, so we can actually give this a try. So let me pause this for a moment, and I'm going to explain what I'm going to remove. So I'm going to remove this mushroom effect completely. So this in the middle, this ring, and this big puff of whatever fire it is. So going to remove those 3, because those make it a nuclear explosion, recognizable as nuclear. And without those 3, it just looks like a big explosion. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. So cloud big, which is this one, I'm going to remove that. And we have our cloud ring, I'm going to remove that as well. And the last thing I want to remove is actually the parents. So that's why I created a new empty, and we're going to basically drag all of these into our new parent. And let's remove this one as well. So we have a new parent for this, and we have everything here. I'm going to give everything the same 1.19 delay, quite important as well. So now when we hit restart, it will take a bit longer. And again, that's just to match the animation. So yeah, that looks looks pretty cool. So there we go. And we can actually add our, so let's add everything here. So we have our trigger on enable. Let's add those actions again. Let's turn on destroy after finishing straight away, just to make sure we don't forget. And the action for this is going to be really simple. It's going to be a 30-second wait. Now 30 seconds is a really long time, and the reason for that is because all of these effects last 30 seconds before it completely stops. In my opinion, it's a bit sooner than that, but honestly it doesn't hurt at all to just wait 30 seconds. So yeah, that's really it for this one. So let's drag in our tutorial fire explosion, and perfect. So now let's remove it from our hierarchy, and we can set up our actions. So for now, oh, still had that, sorry about that. I'm just going to add a second trigger that will just, you know, basically activate this spell. So no system yet, that's what we'll do in our next one. And I'm keeping that empty because I'm just going to duplicate our existing fireball, and I'll walk through it of course, but let's do fire burst, explosion, whatever works. And let's drag that in. And a lot of these actions will be the same, which is why it's just so much more convenient to duplicate it. I'm going to remove our explosion small here. There we go. And I'll be adding, which will be available in the description as well, I'll be adding the normal explosion. There we go. Need to make sure this is set to minus, I don't know, 4 as well. And let's scale this up a bit. I'm not sure why this is so small. Perfect. Now all of these will need to be set on the correct layer, so that's TVE motion. And yeah, it's you know, it's quite the effect. So as you can see, it will have a big effect. Obviously this area will be scorched as well, so the impact will be a bit different than we can see here, but it's a cool little start, and that's why we're going to set this up from the start. It will start straight away. So that's going to be pretty nice. Let's turn this off as well, and then we're going to add another polygon particle effect, which is swirl. There we go. And I'm going to resize this, so that's going to be 4 on all axes, so it's going to be pretty nice. And I do want this to match the same color as the healing circle, so a bit of orangey red, whatever it really is. And let's add that to our starting color. Perfect. So let's turn that off as well. And we have all of these elements. Now the actions, like I said, will be really similar. So we're going to have a burst shake. So that's the action. We're going to have a player is controllable turned off. We're going to have a attach from right hand the fire small. And I'm going to duplicate that one, and I'm going to add it to the left hand as well. I think it's pretty cool. Basically 2 fireballs, you know, mixing with each other to create that big explosion. Looks pretty nice. Then set active is the correct healing circle because we did duplicate the entire thing here. Now this one will need our new explosion, and we'll need to duplicate it again to add our swirl. So let's make all of these smaller. then we are instantiating something else now. We're no longer instantiating our fireball. We're going to instantiate, well, a couple of things. So let's drag in everything. The order doesn't matter because the order is literally, you know, it's executing all at the same time. And fire explosion. There we go. So we have our flames, our scorch, and our fire explosion all at once. So pretty nice. We have our animation that we're going to use. So let's actually head there for a moment. So last time we set up a simple state. So, you know, right click, create game creator, characters, simple state, which gives you this. And I dragged in a animation that I use. Now I'm going to use, you know, it's a new simple state and it has a different animation. If you are using the same one I am, quite important little detail is that you do need to make sure that these poses are baked and that loop is off. It's a bit strange, by default it was turned on. Not really not really sure why, but yeah, that's an important little detail. And as you can see, it's supposed to be a buff, a buff animation. I'm not really sure why it's a buff animation, but this is what it looks like. It looks really cool. I do like it. It's a really explosion type of effect. So it looks really nice. Obviously, I'll add everything in our description. So let's get back and let's drag in that new state. So flame burst. I'm going to keep the transition time to 0.25, that's fine. I am going to change the wait to 4 seconds. This explosion is a bit longer, the animation is a bit longer. If your animation is really short, you might want to reduce this a bit. And then we're going to reset. Now for this reset, I'm doing a transition time of 1 second because the end state of the animation doesn't properly match. Well, it doesn't really have a good exit, so increasing the transition time will increase the blending and make it look a lot more natural, which is really nice. Our player is going to be controllable again as well, which is perfect. We are going to deactivate, we already had healing circle. Let's do the explosion and let's create a duplicate here and let's turn off that swirl as well. We're going to remove the flame from the right hand, but we also need to remove it from the left hand. So let's do that as well. And there's not going to be a wait at the end. That's not really necessary. So like I said, really similar set of actions. Not much is different here. We're just instantiating a bit more. So yeah, let's give this a go and see what it looks like. But before I hit play, I just realized I actually forgot to do something. So in our fire explosion, where are you? I think it was fire explosion. There we go. Everything was still set to Y13. I just remembered. So let's actually completely different values even. So I'm going to set all of this to 0. Maybe the light shouldn't be 0 though. I'm not sure. That's fine. We'll just see what happens. So let's try this out. So I'm going to run to this big patch of grass because, obviously it looks coolest in grass, and we're going to activate our spell. And yeah, as you can see, there's a lot going on here. So big explosion, you might want to ease it on a couple of things, but that's completely up to you. And yeah, we have this really cool effect. So the terrain is scorched, there were some flames. Maybe those flames should stay a bit longer, but that's okay. And everything slowly regrows. And the important thing here is that you see everything slowly disappear from our scene. There we go. That's it. So we're instantiating a lot of stuff and it's really nice. So let's do this again. It just looks so cool. And you know, we have our flames, we can walk around, everything stays here, and yeah, you know, that's it. That's it. You know, a big effect on our terrain. So really cool. So just like last time with the fireball spell, our character still has that same, our enemy basically still has that same trigger. So he has a trigger for on tag enter, and that's spell, and it's going to call his damage conditions, the same we use for, you know, receive shot, melee, etc. Now the problem with these default values obviously is that, you know, it's only going to hit him for, I think, 20 damage or something like that, which obviously, you know, is not enough for a big explosion like this. So we'll set that up together with the entire system of mana on how to actually properly use these spells and not make them, well, basically cheating. So we'll do that next time. But yeah, that's it for now. Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.